Good evening, KZN. Thank you very much for giving us your time this Sunday evening. Sibonge ukuthi namhlanje usithathile isinqumo sokuthi ube nathi on the Sunday NewsWrap. Igama lami uZowakha Mbatha. And as promised earlier, we are now going to be chatting to Mbali Baduza. As you recall that Parliament today celebrates 27 years kulo nyaka lo of the country's constitution since it came into effect. The constitution was signed into law by the first democratic president, Utata Nelson Mandela. That was on the 10th of December 1996, and it came into effect on the 4th of Feb 1997. Sikhuluma Mbali Baduza. She is the CEO of the Constitution Hill. Esibizwa manje ngokuthi We the People South Africa. Good evening, Mbali, and thank you very much for giving us your time on VumaFM.
Thank you so much. Good evening to you and your listeners.
Asqalela, can you share on what your NGO is about? What is it that it does? Okay. And explain to us why the move from what was known as Constitution Hill Trust to now We the People South Africa.
Sure. So We the People South Africa is an organization that believes that South African Constitution is a call to action rather than a legal document. And our work is to educate the people of South Africa about what the Constitution says and its impact on society. This is so that Abantu can know, own, and engage the Constitution and become active participants in our constitutional democracy. And the reason why we moved away from our legal name, which is Constitution Hill Trust, to We the People South Africa, is because We the People of South Africa is the first sentence of the Constitution of South Africa. And we thought it was a good way to symbolize that this Constitution belongs to everybody in it, and we wanted to be that representation. So these are We the People South Africa.
Mbali, let's talk now about the significance of celebrating 20 years since the Constitution came into effect in South Africa. What would be taken as the main highlights that shows that actually we do have a new Constitution compared to whatever we had before 1997? Yeah.
So it is no mistake that the Constitution has existed this long, right? So the Constitution has drastically transformed the legal, socio-economic, and political landscape of South Africa. Of course, this does not mean all is well, because we know all is not well. We know that there is a big gap between lived reality and the promise of the Constitution. But nevertheless, the Constitution is the flame of our democracy. It secures our basic human rights. It provides avenues for us to hold the state accountable. And it also creates enabling conditions for a society based on human dignity, equality, and freedom. So, in other words, the Constitution is granted authority by the people. It remains the supreme law of the land because of you, because of me, and the listeners, because we choose to. You know, we should see the Constitution like a car. No, like Eskom, because pair to up. If we do not maintain it, it won't work. So today we celebrate the Constitution coming into effect 27 years ago, but we also celebrate ourselves for being its custodian.
But now, say we look back at what we had before 1997 and what we have now.
That difference is constitutional supremacy.
What is that?
So that is when we say the Constitution is the highest law of the land, and any law or conduct that contradicts it is unconstitutional. It's unlawful. So when you read Section 2 of the Constitution, and then it is this Constitution is the supreme law of the Republic. Law or conduct inconsistent with it is invalid, and the obligations imposed by it must be fulfilled. Now, back in the day, the supremacy was with Parliament, and Parliament was the one who could change laws whenever they felt like it. And there was no guiding document that could tell them when something was wrong or right. It was the choice of Parliament, and Parliament is made up of people. So that's the change. We now have this supreme document that guides us on what is right and wrong.
Can that document then, Mbali, is it something that can be changed? Say constitution, when and how, why should it be changed if there has to be a need?
Sure. So the constitution can be changed and has been changed about 18 times already. The last amendment was last year, I believe it was 27 July 2023, to include sign language as the 12th official language of South Africa. And you can see why that's important, right? There's a big population of people who use sign language, and yet they're not catered for in our democracy. And the Constitution allows for language inclusion, and therefore it was amended to include it as an official language.
And Mbali, if one feels the need to have it changed, what is it that they have to do? How do we go about changing the constitution of the land?
Sure. So you can find the detailed answer in Section 74 of the Constitution, but as a summary, to amend the Constitution, at least 2/3 of the members of the National Assembly must agree, so 75%. And in the National Council of Provinces, at least 6 provinces must vote in its favor. Mm-hmm. So it's a high threshold.
So it can't be... how do I influence it as a general member of the public?
Well, let me tell you why it's important, because that will help us talk about how to influence it. Mm-hmm. So, firstly, it's important because it helps us build and protect democracy. You know what, Zowakhe, if you read the preamble of the Constitution, it answers that question better than I can. Mm-hmm. Because honestly, it's a love letter to ourselves and this beautiful country of ours. Iti, we the people of South Africa, through our fairly... Sorry, can I repeat that last part?
Sure.
We the people of South Africa, through our freely elected representatives, adopt this constitution as the supreme law of the Republic, so as to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. Lay the foundations for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people, and every citizen is equally protected by law. Improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person, and to build a united democratic South Africa able to take its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations. So that's why it's important. And it says, as an ordinary person, you can use it, you can lobby with your elected representative, but in actual fact, Parliament must go out to the people and ask for public comment through public.
But even before, Mbali, even before they go and ask for public commentary, who initiates the first stage? Why does it have to be the parliamentarians, not us?
But that's exactly it. And you know, can I elaborate on why that point of yours is very important? Mm-hmm. Because the Constitution was written by us, the South African public, right? We raised the issues of what we wanted to be in the Constitution and how we wanted it to be fulfilled.
I don't remember my mother saying anything about it.
Let me tell you. Let me tell you. So, in 1994, 30 years ago, 20 million South Africans participated in the country's first democratic elections to elect a constitutional assembly. Okay. So the Constitutional Assembly was a joint sitting between the National Assembly and the Senate. And it is a remarkable moment in our history because the country said this assembly must draft and adopt the new constitution. So we elected 490 members to the Constitutional Assembly, and it was the most representative thing you'll ever see people from all walks of life, different generations, racial groups, sexual orientation, and social standing. And the first decision that the Constitutional Assembly made was that all of its meetings, all of its discussions and negotiations will be in public view. So if you actually look and you Google and you go onto YouTube, you will see these negotiations. And the members were free to speak in any language that they wanted to. And the members also traveled around the whole country to ask people to tell them what they want to be in the Constitution. What should the Constitution say? And the motto was, nothing above the heads or behind the backs of the people. And so the Constitutional Assembly embarked on what is, and I believe will forever be, the country's largest and most comprehensive ever public participation campaign. So what they did is that they threw the obligation to write and raise issues back to the people, and the people took it up. So there's absolutely no reason for us to wait for Parliament to raise an issue. We can do so ourselves. We've done it before.
Does the Constitution, Mbali, has any effect, or how does it affect ukwakhiwa komthetho generally now in the country?
Sure. So Parliament is the national legislator. It's the one that makes law. Yeah? What they do is that they pass new laws, they amend existing laws, and they also repeal or cancel old laws, but guided by the Constitution. So any law that comes into effect must be in line with the Constitution, otherwise it's unconstitutional. But for further reading, listeners, I would recommend that you look at Section 75 and Section 76 of the Constitution.
Thank you very much, Mbali, for giving us your time. Kuyisonto kusihlo on VumaFM. As we are about to wrap up now, how does this then affect the governance of the country?
Well, in similar ways to
nempilo zethu nje in general, Mbali, uhlala ukuhlanganisa konke.
Sorry, Tata?
I was saying ukuthi also include how it affects our daily livelihoods as well.
Okay, sure. So the Constitution says that the government has certain obligations that it must fulfill. And if those obligations are not fulfilled, then the government is acting unconstitutionally. But how it affects our daily lives, the Constitution is the manifesto of the people. It shows us the kind of society we want to be. And in fact, has realized freedoms that the majority of the country has never had before. The right to protest, the right of movement, the right of expression. And while the rights like access to water, housing, healthcare, and education are not fully realized yet, the Constitution tells us it is our God-given right to have them. And no one can take that away from you. So we must make sure those who are responsible for delivering those rights do so.
Mbali Baduza igama lakhe lelo. Thank you very much for sharing with us this insightful information about our constitution, which we celebrate 27 years namhlanje kuyisonto, which as it came into effect on the 4th of Feb.
Anytime. Can I say one more thing?
Yes, Mbali.
Congratulations, Bafana. Popo.
That's being patriotic, ne?
All the time.
Thank you very much, Mbali.
Thank you so much.